Uh, Good evening, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 153, which is probably going to be our last Splendid Isolation stream for 2023. Okay. Boomer moments, guys. As always, I'm going to start us off with a tune. This went smoothly last week. Let's see if it does this time.
Up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captives' need, to wait in heavy harness on flooded folk and wild. Your new God's sullen people have devil and have child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threats of terror and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, 100 times made plain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace. Fill full the mouth of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, watch not that hidden folly bring all your hopes to loss. Take up the white man's burden, not haughty rule of kings, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The ports ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go make them with your living and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden and reap his soul's reward. The blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye guard. The cry of those ye humour are slowly towards the light. Why brought ye us from bondage, our loved Egyptian guys? Take up the white man's burden, ye dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye leave or do, the silent, sullen people shall wail gods and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days, the lightly proffered laurel, the easy young grudge praise. Come thou to search our manhood through all of thankless years. No age with dear bought wisdom, the judgment of your peers. Take off the white man's burden,
And that was, of course, the excellent Chris Gard, who's a brilliant Australian traditionalist musician. Do go and check out his channel. And I'm very grateful for Chris allowing me to use that as something of our theme tune. So, and of course, it's based on a Kipling poem, so it's entirely appropriate for the channel. Welcome to my guest this evening, Mitch and AI. I'm not sure if we're going to get anybody else. I'm very much hoping Ataman will be able to come in, but obviously at this time of year, everyone's got family and Christmas parties at work and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know who else we may get this evening, but we'll see. I suspect this is going to be our last stream for 2023, unless anyone is desperately keen to do one on Christmas Eve, in which case I will, but I'm not all that fussed about doing it, which will mean for anyone in the chat, we'll be back on the 7th of January. All right. As always, any subject you would first like to bring up, Mitch or AI, whoever's there?
Did you want to get Ukraine out of the way?
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit. This is because this is probably the last stream of this year. I thought we would look back a little bit on the events of 2023, and obviously the war in Ukraine is one of the big ones. Russia certainly seems to be increasingly winning, as far as I can work out. Over to you, Mitch.
Yeah, do I just present to because I can do a screen share. I've got a couple of maps.
Yep, go for it, mate. If you can do it, go for it. I don't know if you can, but you can certainly try. You go to present, and then it'll have screen share at the bottom of it, mate. Davey in the chat is saying Chris Gard must get a lot of views from this channel. Well, I hope he does, because he deserves to.
Is that coming up?
Yeah, it looks like it's going to. It hasn't yet, but I think it will. Can't see why it wouldn't. I can see it on the bottom there. I just don't know why it hasn't come up.
I don't know why it's meant to be a bloody map.
No, I can see it. I don't know why it hasn't come up on the screen. Not sure. If it doesn't work, Mitch, we'll sort it out later on. Just to let people know in the chat, we'll talk about this later on, but I'm hoping that Mitch is going to join me for a special stream towards the end of next week, I beg your pardon, because Mitch is very into like Old English, the original Anglo-Saxon language, and he's also a guy who's into languages generally, and so we can talk a bit about how English has changed over the years and all that kind of stuff. I am by no means an expert on that stuff, but I know Mitch has gone into it in some depth, so you can look forward to that next week. That's something we will do. Probably on Thursday or Friday, but we're not sure yet.
Let's see if it works one last time.
Don't know why that's not working, mate, to be honest. I can see it, but it's not joining. It's not coming up on our screen that the viewers can see at home. So I don't know.
Screw then.
Yeah, don't worry about it, mate. We'll check. We'll sort it out before we do the stream next week.
Yeah. I mean, around Avdiivka, like the Ukrainians getting smashed hard. By the looks of it, I mean, you have. Like, I'm looking at the map. It's just artillery and airstrikes all over the place. The flanks are getting hit hard with Russian attacks on the flanks. So it's surrounded on three sides anyway, so it's not really a great place for Ukrainians to try and hold it. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, what military logic would dictate that they would withdraw to better secured lines?
Well, when I watch Mitch, people like the Military Summary channel who uses maps all the time, you all along the front you can see that there are these enclaves where where the Russians are starting to surround the Ukrainians. Like there's not one or two of them. There's like 4 or 5 places where the Russians are basically starting to surround the Ukrainians. And as you say, military sense would say you withdraw to the shorter line before the enemy get around your flanks. But of course, that's dangerous for the Ukrainians because withdrawing is not too easy when the Russians have far more artillery than they do and also complete air superiority. So, You're muted, Mitch.
Yeah, it had to be gone for a moment. I just don't see. Yeah, as I said, military logic would dictate that at this point, given the huge Russian firepower advantage and the fact that. So, from what it seems, the Congress have just gone away for the holidays without having agreed on anything regarding funding more funding for Ukraine. So,
well, we were saying before the stream started that it looks like the F-16s that Ukraine was getting are now going to be delayed until at least next summer. And quite a lot of people who've been watching this war have come to the conclusion that it's quite unlikely that Ukraine's still going to be fighting by next summer. So who knows? We'll see.
It's quite funny.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say it's quite funny that it's only recently that I've noticed, sort of mainly as I mentioned last time I was on, mainstream publications are trying to, they've been slowly sort of hinting military defeat, and I think now it's sort of become just open. Ukraine they just can't win this. They're not going to win this, but there are still. I still see it on Facebook. I still see it all over social media. That there are these, I assume, accounts who sort of Ukrainian flag accounts who are convinced that that Russia's been losing tens of thousands on the battlefield and victory is imminent. There are even family members of mine who still think that. It's and the question is.
I know Mitch posted something on our Discord about this earlier. I mean, Russian casualties have actually been dropping off quite a lot lately. So there's been far fewer Russians getting killed lately than there have been for a long time.
Yeah. And in the New York Times, they did an article, I think it was fairly recently. It's called The People Snatchers, and it's Ukraine's recruiters use harsh tactics to fill the ranks. And it's basically like you remember the old, what caused the 1812 war between the British and the Americans, the press gangs. It's basically like that, but even more even more sort of brutal in some regards.
I would say the press gangs was used as an excuse largely to try and invade Canada, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The Americans used that as an excuse, the threat to their citizens, and I mean it was just the nonsense. But on this scale, effectively, there and as we mentioned before, they are going after older and older men.
Oh yeah. You look at Ukrainian soldiers, you see videos of Ukrainian soldiers, and there are loads of blokes who are very plainly well over 40 in infantry units, which is ridiculous, I mean, speaking as an old codger myself, you can't do good infantry fighting at that sort of age. You can't. I mean, maybe if you're a lieutenant colonel or a sergeant major, you can do it. But as an ordinary soldier or a lieutenant, no, you that's a young man's game. It's a young man's game. It really is.
Yeah. And I also saw. I was going to say one final bit. I also saw today there's been several videos, and I don't want to say, "Oh, this is this is a sign of a revolt or anything like something significant." I think it's just more. There's a sort of breakdown internally, but in the 228th battalion of the 28th brigade of the AFU, in Kharkiv, I believe, have produced videos of where they're. I imagine these are NCO. I think some of them are NCOs, and they're basically just saying that, making public statements that they do not have the trust of they do not trust their commanders, and effectively saying basically we're going to mute, like on they're stopping short of claiming mutiny.
Well, look, we've said this on this channel quite a few times now, but like the Ukrainian giant, much plugged Ukrainian counteroffensive in the summer was a complete and total failure. It made the notorious British offensive on the Somme in 1916 look successful in terms of ground gain. So yeah, how are the Ukrainians going to win? They're just going to get weaker and weaker from this point. The Russians have an overwhelming artillery advantage. They have an overwhelming ammunition for that artillery advantage. They have almost total air superiority now, and they've got more men. They have more men and they have more reserves. There is no way Ukraine's going to win this war. I think Ukraine resembles a little bit the Third Reich in like 1943 or 1944. In that it doesn't matter how well their soldiers fight; they're just so outnumbered now, and the Russians have so much more materiel than the Ukrainians do, and the Western nations, even America now, has run out of extra ammo to give them. There is no more,
I think it's more a matter of the American Congress have just they've gone away for the holidays, not having agreed on funding Ukraine. So, and mix that in with Ukrainian Twitter doom posting as of late, and they're coming to a realization that the Americans are going to sell them out. They're just going to stop giving them aid. That the time where they could enjoy the glorious Western aid they've memed about a year ago, it's going to dry up, and they're going to have to stand on their own 2 feet. Now they're going to basically be like the Soviet Vietnamese, where inevitably they're going to fold because they can't fight, they can't do anything by themselves. They're going to have without the Americans holding their hand, so to speak. Because the thing is, it's like, for example, the Kiev metro is literally collapsing on itself because of negligence, other than many years of Ukrainian independence, because they've just neglected it that badly.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a key example. That's just one example of how Ukraine just can't do anything by itself. It's so corrupt, so dysfunctional as a state that it can't hold up itself on its own 2 legs.
Well, I mean, as we said, I think last week, Ukrainian Western-supplied weapons have turned up in Gaza because the corrupt Ukrainians have sold them to people who then sold them on to the people in Gaza, to the Hezbollah guys or Hamas guys, I beg your pardon, in Gaza. So yeah, that's just what's happened because Ukraine is so damn corrupt, and their air force has been virtually destroyed, which is one reason I suspect that the Americans have delayed these F-16s being sent to them, because the Americans don't want the F-16's reputation to be destroyed in the same way that the Leopard 2 and the Bradley's reputation has been quite hurt by its employment by the Ukrainians. So yeah, there isn't any way Ukraine's going to win this war. There just isn't.
Sorry, Mitch. Mitch. Carry on.
I was just saying, one thing the Russians have been doing is they've been grinding a lot of areas, not just Avdiivka, but also the area around Bakhmut, where the Ukrainians have given up a lot of ground as of like that. They paid for dearly back in the summer offensive. And you've also got around Marinka, that city which has been fought over since day one has finally fallen, which is pretty bad news for the Ukrainians in the city of Ugledar, which was an area of Russians attacking back in January, which ultimately failed. But if Ugledar is attacked from that flank, which has now been opened by Marinka falling, pretty bad news for Ukraine as well. So the Russians are attacking along several sectors to give off the impression that, okay, there's no decisive area. They're not going to all attack at once. The Ukrainians have to stretch their forces out thin, which is pretty bad news already, given they've got their own issues with manpower and material.
I've just noticed that both my guests have Putin avatars.
Mine is wishing everyone a good Christmas and a happy New Year, and AI's is just going full on Bond villain.
And a dog. I think it's a dog, isn't it?
It looks like a cat.
I think is it a cat? Looks more like a dog. Okay.
I'm not sure it's a cat. It's a bit
it
of
looks
artwork.
like a cat to me.
Bit
It's
of
artwork. It's like Putin is Blofeld in it.
Yeah, I always thought, but he was a bit kind of based as a Bond villain. Blofeld that was, but But
as we said last week, I mean, the most recent thing that Putin and the Russian Duma has done is they've banned LGBTQ stuff, for God's sake. You know, if only some of our leaders would do that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like the other thing about Putin that's come up this week is apparently he did some Q&A session, because that's one thing Putin does.
He did. He took questions from the media, but he also took questions from ordinary Russians. So
he also do that. Yeah, he also do that a lot. Like, you remember that old Russia Inside channel that used to be around before the war started, where Putin would go to like a public event. Let's say he's talking to a bunch of Russian Zoomers or whatever, and they'd be allowed to ask him questions for like 4 hours, and he just answer them without notes or anything.
Yep.
Like, he's a pretty sharp fella from what I observed. Anyway, because that's the thing. Like, it's weird that they label Russia as totalitarian when you can literally ask Putin like really uncomfortable questions, and he just answers them. He doesn't bother gulagging you for asking him an awkward question.
Unlike in Britain, where there's no free speech and you can say something like in a Facebook group and get arrested for it.
Yeah, and it's so. I mean, one of them asked like, I remember like one of the questions asked him was like, what do you think about Odessa and all this? And I go, and Putin said words to the effect of, Odessa is a Russian city and everyone knows it. So so with that, it looks like it's just elevated the war goals now in the war in Ukraine.
Well, I think the longer this war goes on, the worse things are going to turn out for Ukraine. Putin originally offered Ukraine a pretty reasonable deal just after the invasion, which the Americans and the Brits, because it was Boris Johnson who was sent across there, made sure the Ukrainians didn't take. So, I mean, and as we were saying before the stream started, if you're Russia and Putin and the Russian government, you are going to take Odessa and you're going to take the whole of the Ukrainian Black Sea coast, because that way their naval base at Sevastopol is going to be secure, and it won't be unless they do.
Well, it's not that. I mean, at the end of the day, like, once Russia, I mean, because you also get Russian nationalists.
I do understand that Odessa is a majority Russian city. I do understand that. But my point is that strategically speaking, Sevastopol is really important to Russia because it's their only warm water port, pretty much. And the only way that that's going to be secure is if the Black Sea coast of what is now Ukraine is actually going to be Russian. Because then they can put it beyond Ukrainian missile range and this kind of stuff.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, the thing is, because you also get Russian nationalists who say that we also need to annex Kiev, which, if that happens, so you have the already annexed Oblast, plus pretty much all of Ukraine east of the Dnieper, as well as Kiev and Odessa, it becomes a situation where the only
I'll
Ukrainian
be
post.
I'll be honest with you, Mitch. I'll be surprised if they take Kiev in the end. If they even want Kiev in the end.
It's a historical Russian city, though, so
Yeah.
it's.
I don't know. I think they will take Odessa. I do think they'll take all of the Black Sea coast.
Okay, and you
But
could argue how they're going to take Odessa when they have to cross the Dnieper again to do it. So you can say the same.
Not if
you
Ukraine's on its last. If Ukraine's on its last legs, this will not be impossible by any means.
I think for both sides, I think for Putin, he has to take Kiev because of the historical significance.
I think he might. I think he might take it, AI, but I wonder if they will want to hang on to it. You know what I mean?
I think he will, because the problem is, no matter what any Ukrainian nationalist or what anyone really says, the reality is that the foundation of the Russian people, the race, the sort of Eastern Slavic race and its culture,
You're talking
civilization,
about even Rus, aren't you?
Yeah. It is in Kiev, and all major events centers there, no matter what, and so the reality is that in many ways Putin, he really, if he which I think he will do, take everything east of the Dnieper, he might as well just keep on going. I think he'll take Kiev. I don't think he'll take Western Ukraine. I think that would be.
I don't think he wants to, because why does Russia want to occupy an area which is hostile to them? There's no purpose, And if they control the Dnieper River and they control the Black Sea coast of what is now Ukraine, basically Ukraine won't be able to do anything if the Russians don't want them to.
No, and I mean, in that scenario,
and let me be clear, good as far as I'm concerned, because I'm no great fan of the Ukrainians, but whatever.
Yeah. And also one other thing that's that's happened in all of this is that you've had a massive persecution of Christianity in Ukraine, of particularly the Orthodox Church.
Yeah, they don't like the Russian Orthodox Church. They've been arresting Russian Orthodox priests and all sorts of things. Yes,
they've been arrested. Yeah, what they've defined as Russian Orthodox priests. Most of them are just Orthodox. Most of them it's because they follow the Russian rite, which dates back to the Kievan Rus. So it's not. It's not. While yes, they are aligned to the larger Russian Orthodox Church, what they have become is they've made them a pariah, and you're seeing because when you saw the persecutions taking place and the shutting down of monasteries and the banning of monks and everything, and even like this hit list. I remember there was an article right back on this hit list of like Orthodox priests and patriarchs and everything to for the Ukrainians to sort of target. You had at the same time widespread secularization, pro-LGBT, progressive, liberal, American style social cause has been implemented at the same time, and that. Again, that was sort of one of the, at that point, there was a lot of videos coming out of Ukrainian men, serving on the front line who were seeing this and were, starting to rumble and get sort of quite pissed off about all this. So, it's, for me, I think I think that if Russia is successful in capturing Kiev, which I think they would be in that scenario, I think is how the West would respond is what would be interesting, because the psychological the fact that you got so many people even today who are still believing that that Russia's losing and Ukraine is winning.
Really stupid people. It's got to be
Well,
said.
but
I mean, you know.
but it's kind of the masses genuinely believe that. The masses.
I think I don't know about you, mate, but like I have never ever had an ordinary conversation with like an ordinary normie type person about this war. Never. No one's ever said a word to me about it. Who's like
I did have it at work, and when the invasion first happened, I did then. Not so much, in the
People
rest of
seem
the
to
year.
have totally lost interest in it, and of course the blow up in Israel and Gaza is completely like. I mean, one of the things it did was like all of the American politicians suddenly decided that Israel was vastly more important. Not all, most American politicians decided that Israel is vastly more important than Ukraine, of course, which we all knew would happen in that instance. Because there's a lot of dual citizenship people in Congress and in Biden's government and what have you. And it's a convenient excuse. I mean, it was plain after the utter failure of the Ukrainian counteroffensive in the summer, that originally was going to be the Crimean beach party, as the idiot NATO shill dudes were talking about before. Complete and utter failure. And I just think that Gaza and Israel is a convenient excuse for the US and other Western people to turn around and say, but there is nothing spare anyway. Like the Brits had said months ago, we have nothing more to give to Ukraine. I mean, the Brits had bugger all to start with. Our armed forces have never been weaker in about 350 years. So we had nothing to give them anyway. And the same is true of the Germans and the French, the Australians, the Canadians, and even the Americans now do not have much spare stuff they can give to Ukraine anymore. No one has. It's
Also,
all been given to them.
Also, important update is, as people will know, and we've criticised this channel on it here before. Kings and generals. They tend to do historical related subjects. They were probably one of the biggest shills for Ukraine at the start of the war. They led what I would describe as absolutely disgusting revisionist take to delegitimize the origin of the Russian people and just blatantly all out lie about history. And for me, that's unforgivable. And people there should be reminded of it every day that they are that they did that, and they should.
I used to be subscribed to those guys.
I used to be subscribed.
When as soon as I saw them coming out with propaganda, I just stopped subscribing to them. And I think it's been pointed out on the Old Glory Club channel, the US patriotic channel, that they were being given scripts by Western NGOs, including British ones, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I remember there was a bunch of history channels that were other ones, like there's one called Marcher and stuff, and along with them and the Kings and Generals wanted to buddy them all up to do like a collective video together to tell the real story, the quote unquote real story of Ukrainian people. And the only one who refused, because he said he wasn't going to be part of the revisionist bullshit, was Real Talk Crusader. Who has a really good? He does a channel on the Crusade channel.
Yeah, he's good. I like him. I do like him. He's good. You mean Real Crusade's History is the channel you're talking about?
I just mentioned his other like live stream channel that he's got several channels. But if you anything on like the third, second, or Crusades or whatever, or the tutorial
Real Crusade's History is an excellent YouTube channel. I do like him. He also does. His sister also does, which he backs. He's a musician, and his sister does some quite good, pretty trad songs and stuff sometimes as well. Yeah.
No, an excellent channel. But going back to Kings and Generals, now I still, because like you, I was subscribed to them. And then when I saw, because I watched a lot of their videos beforehand, it was good quality on the Roman and Greek and everything,
I
ancient
think
stuff.
frankly, I think they were offered money, mate. That's what I think. They were
I think
money.
they were offered money, they took it.
Yeah.
And I hope I hope it haunts them for the rest of their time. But recently, because I was a former subscriber, I still get notifications from them, and I saw that actually they've done a video where they've said, yeah, Ukraine is losing and Russia's winning. So
Oh, I think I've seen that video. I can't remember the video now. I wiped it from my memory, but I remember. Hold on, hold on. I think I've watched it.
I mean, look,
Like,
everyone has been seeing that Ukraine has been losing since at least, like, I don't know, the late summer of this year. Since at least, you had to be a moron not to see Ukraine was losing since the late summer of this year.
especially after the counter-offensive. I mean, again, I think even on his channel back then, he sort of said the counter-offensive was successful. So,
successful in what way? Killing Ukrainians?
well, fertilizing the fields also. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
I mean, needless to say, for YouTube's purposes, we are against all violence in the world, and we think there should be a peace deal in Ukraine as soon as possible. We're not in favor of anyone getting killed, and I'm not. Really, I'm not. I think it's very sad that these tens of thousands of Ukrainian young men are being killed and maimed in a hopeless war. They have no chance of winning whatsoever. No.
the only reason I'd go against a peace deal now is I know that you just know the Kremlin would screw it up. Like, I do not trust the Kremlin with a peace deal at the moment.
For YouTube
Let's say
purposes,
a year down the line.
For YouTube purposes, of course, we would like there to be peace as soon as possible. But you are correct. Politically, there are issues with that, of course. But we as individuals, and me as someone who runs this YouTube channel, I hope there is peace as soon as possible. I don't want anyone to get killed, and this is true. I really don't.
Well, did you hear about Zelensky saying that we're going to be peace talks in Switzerland, but the Russians weren't invited whatsoever? So,
well, that'll be good.
What kind of peace talks
then?
event?
How can you have peace talks when the other side isn't invited? It's like, that's insanity. But yeah, I can see Zelensky getting a bullet in the back of the head at some stage. I think that could easily happen from his own military. That could easily.
Was it Potentialist or Charlemagne or someone like that who said, like, Zelensky won't see through the end of a war, or he will not outlive a war? Can't remember. It was either one of them.
Unless the Americans fly him out to one of his mansions in Miami or wherever, or one of those super yachts that he's bought recently. Apparently, he's bought two of them. Unless the Americans do that, I will be quite surprised if Zelensky survives.
Nah, Zelensky's like that Saakashvili over in Georgia, like a complete rat. Like, he'll scurry away one way or the other.
Maybe. I don't know.
I would say that if you remember the 2014 Color Revolution, the Maidan Revolution, or what they call it?
Yeah, Euromaidan.
Yeah. What you saw there was pretty much the ousting of quite a pro-Russian government, and also officials. Like, let's forget about the politicians, the elected politicians for a sec, but actually, like, the bureaucrats, the people behind them who actually control mechanisms in your country. There was a total clear out of those people, those pro-Russian people, and they were replaced.
AI, there's audio of the American ambassador there. I think it was the American ambassador, saying, "Oh no, you can't have this bastard. No, not this bastard, because these were all pro-Russian people." And she was literally telling the new Ukrainian government who they could have and who they couldn't. But no, it wasn't organised by the CIA. Not a chance. No.
And so my point is that the trouble is, I think, there isn't. I think even if when Zelensky is, I think he will be removed, you'll probably just have a more zealot taking its place, because we've also seen, and this is another story that's come this week, that there was a village meeting somewhere I think it was somewhere in Western Ukraine.
Is this the grenades?
Yeah,
is this the grenades?
Yeah, it's that Hungary. Yeah, it was that Hungarian province you were mentioning earlier.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the area.
And
whatever it's called.
And what happened? There was there was a meeting. You had, like, I guess, councillors or whatever local elected officials they referred to, or deputies, or whatever it is.
This was a video on Twitter, by the way, guys, which I've seen. And all these politicians are having a meeting, and there are women there and all the rest of it. And some dude suddenly pulls 3 grenades out of his pocket and just drops them in the room.
It's been revealed that the person who did that, the attack, the person who used those grenades, is a politician who's a member of the Law and the Law and Justice, or whatever Zelensky's party is.
Mm-hmm.
So,
very democratic, eh?
Yeah. So I don't know what I don't know what somebody said in one of the comments. The translations was that he was demanding. He was saying, like, let me speak, and then he just chucked the grenades in the room. Somebody else said that there was something about contracts, like a sort of a government contract. So there may, who knows what that was about.
I remember it was something along the lines of the war, like the officials in the area were getting bonuses, even though the water infrastructure in that particular area was falling apart. And this guy, apparently, he just got aggravated or something by the corruption in the area.
And by the way, Mitch has just reminded me, it was Victoria Nuland is the American official who was actually telling the Ukrainian government after the Maidan coup who they could and could not have in their government.
Yeah, and also she there's a video, like, I think it was like a video or audio intercept where she said F for EU because they were because the EU.
Yeah, it was an audio thing. Yeah, she said she did. She said FUCK the EU because she's an American, so
Yeah, not just that. She was also passing out biscuits in Euromaidan Square as the revolution or coup, whichever you want to call it, was being done. So it's like those Ukrainians who took biscuits from her. They're pretty much eating from the devil's hand, so to speak.
Well, also bear in mind that at the same time this was happening, there was like about 30 or 40 pro-Russian people who were trapped inside a building in Odessa, who were then burnt to death by the Ukrainians. Again, very, very democratic, just great.
Yeah, it's. If you were to look at Victoria Nuland, her face really just suits how evil she is. Like, she's probably one of those evil-looking people.
But Mitch, I've got to say, mate, I think the pigeons are coming home to roost, and Ukraine's not going to win this war. And there ain't no way they're going to win this war. And increasingly, even the pro-Ukrainian people and some of the totally dishonest Western mainstream media are starting to admit that this is the case. There is no way Ukraine can win.
Yeah, you know about Jay in Kiev, fellow on bloody Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, whenever Ukraine is losing a particular battle or whatever, that guy will just post up the most outlandish claims in just his seething rants. So, of course, when he's seething about, the United States no longer sending any more aid to Ukraine, or rather, like, sending less and less over time, he's pretty much calling them all, like, murderers and all this blah, blah, blah. And then he's setting up the Russians. He's just using and then every time Russia wins a battle, he'll just call the Russians like kiddie fiddlers or whatever. Because
to be fair, I do think there were people in America in the Defense Department who have known for a long time that Ukraine can't win this war. But it's taken them a long time to get ahead of the State Department guys, because the State Department guys are the people, the foreign policy dudes who are clueless, as excellent American foreign policy dudes like John Mearsheimer have pointed out many times.
I'm pressing Exodus on this because
seriously, Mitch, there's quite a lot, Mitch. Seriously, there is quite a lot of evidence that there were American military dudes, and not the guy at the top, Milley, who's obviously a political controlled puppet, but a lot of lower down military guys have been saying for some time, this is just a waste of our money and weapons and munitions.
I thought you meant like the top, like the ultimate top of it.
No, there was some there's been lower down guys in the American Department of Defense who have been saying for ages, there is no way Ukraine can win this war. But they couldn't get anywhere against the Biden administration and the State Department dudes who are useless now. As I say, John Mearsheimer, who is an excellent American foreign policy dude, has been pointing out for like a year and a half now. They're clueless.
Well, it's not just they're clueless; they're just outright fucking retards. I mean, for example, none of them speak a word of Russian. First of all, like Michael McFaul, who used to be the American ambassador to Russia, he does not know a single thing about Russia, just by being the ambassador to that place for several years. These are the kind of people who make up the State Department in reference to Russia, or like the Eurasia desk, as they call it, wherever. They don't speak a single word of Russian, so how can we expect to be understanding Russia as a country?
Exactly.
But they don't understand. They think that Putin is literally Hitler, even though Putin is probably the most moderate guy Russian politics has. There's plenty of guys much worse than Putin, like Medvedev, who's just 10 years ago, everyone was picking him as some like liberal guy, when actually he's much more of a war hawk than Putin could ever be.
Well, I mean, look, it's crazy because, the West goes on about, Putler and all this nonsense, when one of the Russian war aims in Ukraine is denazification.
Yeah, a lot of that is, I think, it was AA who coined the term, like, in the West, you had the boomer truth as we know it, and then in the East, in Russia, the Russians have their own boomer truth around Nazis.
The Azov battalion dudes in Ukraine, many of them have literal swastika tattoos, for God's sake. Now, I'm not particularly anti people having those if they want them. I don't care, to be honest. But if you're going to pretend that, he's Putler and all this stuff, the new incarnation of the most single evil man in the entire history of the world, unlike Stalin or Chairman Mao or Pol Pot or many others, who are all equally evil as far as I'm concerned. But if you're going to pretend that, then I'm sorry. When the Ukrainians have literal neo-Nazi units, it's just insanity.
They are disgraceful neo-Nazi units at best, because look what's happened. They've got a small hat running their country, and who was implementing degenerate liberal Western policies. I mean, any Azov battalion member who was a genuine, real deal would have done X, Y, and Z to stop that.
What's happening with the Rat King? Yeah, for sure.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying
the chat makes a good point in that the Biden admin has very big interests in Ukraine. I mean, the Biden's son, when he wasn't sniffing cocaine off of the rear ends of underage Ukrainian prostitutes, was doing deals there, and we have video of Biden's son doing that. It's like there's no argument that he did it, except of course the mainstream media would never show it. But whatever.
The thing about the American involvement with Ukraine is because you look up the American high command, the likes of Milley and the Lloyd Austin and all that, they get all their information from the Institute of the Study of War, who are run by the brother-in-law of Victoria Nuland, and the ISW are probably the most retarded outlets you've got, because I remember like they were saying like, oh well, the Russians are sending men to the front to thwart the Ukrainian offensive so that they appear stronger, and I'm thinking, so that's yeah, like oh well, the Russians are attacking the Ukrainians to kill them, or the Russians are defending their positions against the Ukrainians to
It's
stop their
disgusting, isn't it?
offensive.
You can't
Well,
believe
it's not
that
bad.
the Russians are defending their positions. I mean, as if that isn't what soldiers are supposed to do. I mean, I'll tell you one thing. Look, I want to wrap this up in about 10 minutes, guys, because that'll be an hour. We've been talking about this pretty much. But I would just point out that, like, in 2023, Russia was aiming to recruit, I think it was something like 220,000 new contract soldiers, and contract soldiers are like their regular troops, they're not conscripts. And I believe that they actually recruited something like 250,000 contract soldiers. And to give some context to that, I very much doubt the British Army is much over 70,000 men and far too many women these days. So, Russia ain't doing bad in terms of just even voluntary recruitment. They're not doing badly at all.
Well, it's like it's estimated that so in Ukraine, we reckon no more than 120 Russian soldiers get killed per day in Ukraine. Meanwhile, on a day-to-day basis, the Russian army gets on average 1,500 new guys signing up.
Yep,
so,
exactly. And Ukraine is now raiding nightclubs in Kiev to pick up people. And as we said earlier, look at any Ukrainian military unit on the front line, and you'll see loads of blokes who are plainly well over 40.
Yeah, it's like you have. To be fair, I wonder how much of that is because Ukraine's had a really low birth rate the past 30 odd years after the fall of the Soviet Union. At least with Russia, their birth rate went up under Putin because, unlike with Ukraine, Russia is doing economically well. They recovered from the 90s and they're doing a lot better. Whereas Ukraine, as RWA would put it, Russians of attitude, they put it as Ukraine is just Russia that never escaped the 90s. Like they've always been run by oligarchs who never gave.
Oh yeah, it's always been one of the most corrupt countries in the world. It was a center for the sex slave traffic. It's a center for the baby traffic for like lesbians and gay guys who want to have a baby that very often come from Ukraine. It's not a good place, not at all. I'm sorry, just
no. Yeah, so that's the thing like about Ukraine is just I can imagine that's one of the main reasons why most of the men fighting the war are, let's say, around the age of 40, because the birth rate itself from the 90s onward has always been pretty low for Ukraine compared to Russia's.
Well, it's going to be a damn sight lower now because how many thousands and thousands of Ukrainians, especially Ukrainian women, have left the damn place, So many have.
Yeah, and like the offensive where they just were told to attack the Russian lines head on. That was the Americans telling them to do so, like the American high command telling them to do so. The Ukrainians, for their credit, they were just saying, "Look, you can't attack the Russians head on. Like we know the situation better than that. We should go around them, or we should try to squeeze them." But the Americans just told them, just attack head on, just attack, smash your head against these
all I know about this, Mitch, is that the Americans and the Brits and the rest of NATO had this air-land battle doctrine, but it only works if you've got, first of all, you've got to have total air superiority, or it will not work. And of course, the Ukrainians don't have that at all. Like the Ukrainian Air Force has been basically totally destroyed. And then you've got to have overwhelming firepower, and again, they don't have that. The Russian firepower, particularly in terms of artillery, is vastly more powerful than the Ukrainians, and they have a lot more ammunition. And so this air-land battle doctrine will not work. I saw many Ukrainians who were being trained by British soldiers, because you can watch that shitty propaganda channel run by the British Ministry of Defence called Forces News, where they were training them. And you can't. They're training them to fight a war that Ukraine literally was not able to fight because the Russians had total fire dominance and total air superiority. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, so I mean, I suppose for the last few minutes of talking about Ukraine, why don't you just talk about what do you think is going to look like for Ukraine in a year's time or in a month's time or whatever? Because in a year's time, I doubt Ukraine will be able to do much.
I hope very much that the war will be over in a year's time. And if it is over, the only way it's going to be over is Russia has pretty much totally won.
Yeah, that's the problem. For Russia to totally win, you'd have to cross the Dnieper again, which, you can talk about all you want about Ukraine getting smashed hard, but the thing is, they've still got 500,000 men or somewhere around that in arms. You can talk all you want about how they're all men over the age of 40, but at the end of the day, crossing the river is no small feat, especially when it's wide and it's expensive.
I don't know that they really do, Mitch, to be honest. I think they need to get up to the Dnieper River, except in the south. In the south, yeah, they probably do need to cross it. And yeah, they got to take Odessa and the Black Sea coast of Ukraine. But, if the Ukrainian army is losing hard enough, and I'm pretty sure they're going to be certainly by towards the second half of next year, I just don't see what the Ukrainians can do. There is no way they can win. They're not going to be able to reverse this situation. All they're going to be doing is retreating and retreating.
Well, they can go on with defensive and just give the Russians a headache. It's going to be futile anyway, but that's what they're going to perceive it as. They might just go spiteful about this and just go, look, we'll make sure the Russians pay dearly for that, blah, blah, blah.
Look, yeah, I mean, the Russians are going to lose men. Obviously, you can't fight war without losing men, but there's no conceivable way at this stage that Ukraine can win. It's just not possible.
Okay, sure, but you look at the attitude of Ukrainian society. It's like a lot of them. I mean, fair enough, a lot of them get demoralized about this, but you still don't see. I mean, people keep talking about, well, Ukraine is going to fold. Ukraine is going to lose by. Ukraine's decisively losing the war and all this, and I go, okay, but you're not seeing massive surrenders. I'll start believing that the war is soon going to be over when I see masses of Ukrainian soldiers just surrendering, like the German army back in the latter end of 1918, because the morale must have taken a hit lately with all the Ukrainian doom posting. So I don't believe that. I wouldn't be surprised in 2 years' time there won't be much of Ukraine left. It will just be all to the pickings of whatever the Kremlin wants and what Putin decides, with the rest of it just being a rump state, which I don't think the EU will admit Ukrainian, because it won't be economically viable with only Western Ukraine. And why would you want to enter in a state that provides no benefit to you other than just being a total black hole for money?
Yeah, I don't know. Final thoughts, AI? I just don't see what Ukraine can do except try and get the best peace terms they can at this stage. That's the only thing I can see they can do.
Yeah, I think I think the Zelensky will be gone during next year.
Yeah. I mean, look, most of the people I respect who have got some sort of military experience and what have you have always said right from the start there was no way Ukraine could win this war. But, that's just me and the people I follow.
In some ways, this is going to sound sort of an odd comparison, maybe, but when you think about the revolution and the sort of the values of that revolution in 2014 that came in basically importing global American values, as they call it.
I'm British. I'm sorry to say it, but you have to say these days it's British.
Well, I don't necessarily believe that, because a lot of the gay stuff it has its origins in New York and California, but
but I mean, let's be fair here, AI. Yes, the vast majority of ordinary, average British people don't believe in that shit at all. But I don't think the vast majority of ordinary, average Americans do either. You know.
No, but I mean, well, I don't know. I don't really know anymore. But what I do know is that you're seeing this total forced conversion in Ukraine by by the leadership in Ukraine on the Ukrainian people, quite similar to the sort of reign of terror. I'm thinking back to the reign of terror during the French Revolution. Now, unlike in France, they had Napoleon figure to fend off the Austrians and the Austrians and the Habsburgs and all that. This time, there isn't a Ukrainian Napoleon figure to fend off and to keep all the crazies in power.
Yep. No, that makes sense.
That person doesn't exist, and so I think there's also going to be I think there's just going to be a collapse, because I genuinely think the Ukraine has come to represent like a hyper extreme of the worst aspects of modernity in modern societies in the West.
No, I honestly think the Ukrainian army is just going to eventually. The Ukrainian army is just going to say, "No, I'm not doing this anymore, boys, because I don't want to get killed for no purpose." Because what is the purpose? The purpose, as far as NATO is concerned, is to kill as many Russians and cost them as much money as possible. But this is plainly now failing. It's plainly failing.
I mean, just to think about it, you're a Ukrainian soldier on the front lines. You have your children, your wife at home, and while you're away, your wife's been propagandized into hating the patriarchy. Your kids have been propagandized into being gay and hating their own in-group race group in favor of multi-structural racism and internalized racism.
So in other words, what's done in every single Western nation now? Absolutely.
And your daughter is now being taught that the greatest go out and be a girl boss and don't worry about starting a family or continuing the family legacy. And so you're going to have again, these societies are very family orientated. And they're going to be completely detached. They used to be, but now it's going to be completely detached. And as I say, it's a very, for me, that's what's the most depressing thing about it, because it's happened in so many places, and I do think that the reason why I think why a lot of Poles are pro-American, I think why a lot of are pro-Western, a lot of you would say like the based countries, is that they have like this very misguided view when they were behind the Iron Curtain of what the West was like, and I think that's like that is like Eastern Bloc boomer truth.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah, there are times where I really hate on Eastern Europe, especially the Polish and the Baltic states. They're the worst offenders for this, where they think the United States is all Reagan and the UK is all Thatcherism, and we're all fighting for freedom against the evil ziggers over in Russia and all this, against the evil communists. Like, they still think of Russia as being like an evil totalitarian bastion where communism still holds reign and whatnot.
Yeah.
So,
whereas actually, I think in many respects that Britain and America are more communist these days than Russia is. So,
well, you see, I put out on Twitter. I think I did like a quote tweet to Morgoth, and I basically, I brought up this image of I think like the Berlin Wall. People were crossing the Berlin Wall and they're dismantling it and all that sort of stuff. And there's this image. You have like these East German men, blonde haired men in their East German uniforms, and their uniforms are absolutely pristine. One thing I would say about the East Germans is their boots, their uniforms, their buckles. I mean, I've never seen anything so in that particular image. That it is incredibly, like, it looks like it's brand new. I think it could be brand new. I don't know.
Mate, AI. It's funny. It's the East German guys who are now the most right-wing people in Germany by a long way.
Yeah,
You know?
but the reason is,
guys, excuse me just for a second, please, if you wouldn't mind carrying on talking, please.
Yeah, sure. Oh, sorry. Yeah, in that image, you have these two or three East German men, and they're stood up. They have a good prop posture. Their back is straight. Their shoulders are back. They carry their heads quite high. They have a nice tidy hair. They're clean shaven. They just look presentable, and they hold pride in themselves, at least. And then you look and then across you have like the breaking of the wall, and there's these people trying to shake their hands, and they're not they're not shaking the West Germans' hands. And you look at the West Germans, and you have like long-haired hippies. You have what I could say a very sort of crass, a very sort of disgusting mass of people who are German, but they're not German. They're spiritually, because as we know, in West Germany there was a long period after the war when these people have been growing up of basically, I know it's called denazification, but in reality it's de-Germanification. And for me, that image is kind of important because in some ways, I mean, in most ways, actually, East Germany was probably the last true embodied the German spirit nation.
More than West Germany did. More than West Germany did, for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, just to give, one other thing, I was actually when I did that stream with Cringewalker, which is I think still one of my better ones, where I said East Germany was actually based and West Germany was a cringe liberal shithole. I think it was Paul Gottfried, and he said, while you had the reintroduction of Prussian military traditions in the East German militaries in the late 60s, early 70s, at the same time in West Germany, you had student riots, you had mainstream politicians who were mocking the West German military ethos and German tradition, and then East Germany was kind of just upholding that Prussian tradition and military tradition, and also just German in some ways just German heritage. And I would say, I know there's usually people in chat will say, well, hold on a sec, what about the persecutions of the Lutheran churches? And after the war, there were several splits in the Lutheran churches in Germany. I would say in both cases, there was state persecutions in West and East Germany. If I was in both ways, in the West, it was done via the guise of liberalism to or I was under the guise of freedom of choice. The old freedom of choice. In the East, it was done. In the East, many communists just saw the church as a threat, because in the East, it was at the time a lot of East Germans were Protestant, and so it was just seen as a threat. It was Honecker who wanted to bring the East German Lutheran churches into a close tie with the state. I think it was under the Sweden or Norway Accord. He did, because it was in many ways, if you actually look at the Accord, I actually think he wanted to make it like a state religion, like a communist Lutheran church or something like that. But it never happened, of course.
I'm very conscious, guys, that we're now on nearly an hour and 10 minutes. we haven't covered anything which was British or Old Commonwealth, in the sense of we've been involved in this shit, and not in a good way. But we haven't really covered anything which is British or Old Commonwealth in the sense of Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and back in the day, South Africa. So yeah, did you have a first subject that you wanted to bring up at all, AI?
I mean, the only thing that I can think about at the moment is the debate that's been raging in. I've seen on American Twitter. Maybe we won't mention it because it isn't Old Commonwealth, but it is. I just been seeing like bits in the background. Something about like a statue of Satan in the
Oh
Iowa
yeah, yep.
state.
Some based ex-US Navy guy or military guy anyway went in there and knocked it down. Yes, good and good on him. And it was actually a satanic statue put up by a satanic church. It was just, you would have laughed at it. So they're pulling down and melting down statues of Robert E. Lee, who by anyone's standards was a good and honorable man. But yes, satanic churches can have their own statues of Satan up in an American state capital. It's just craziness. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, I've just been seeing, I have to say, I don't advocate any sort of action against people, but I'm absolutely, I genuinely believe libertarians deserve, the wall treatment. I'm sorry, but I just the one group that just deserve everything is libertarians. I mean, they would usher in the apocalypse, just so they can say that they weren't status. I mean, there is.
Yeah.
I just the most disgusting groups, and to be honest, that sort of train of thought is I see a lot of
look, there was a picture I saw on Twitter, and it was the Satanist church that put up this
the temple,
Satan
the
statue
temple.
in the state capital or whatever it was. The Satanist church that did that, in this Satanist church, they have a statue of Beelzebub with a little girl and a little boy looking up to them. I mean, come on, guys. Come on. You let these people put a statue in your state capital? All right. Does Beelzebub look any worse than most of these transvestite story hour people? Probably not. But even so, we probably shouldn't be supporting it,
Well, it's
Nope.
like I don't know if you caught this by Niall Ferguson, where the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, where he's saying the youth in the West don't believe in nothing. They believe in things, but those things are not liberal democracy.
Good.
So
good. I hope he's right, because I
Well,
don't believe in liberal democracy anymore. I gave up on it a long time ago.
Guess the ethnic origin of the founder of the Church of Satan.
Oh God, no! Don't tell me.
Oh, is
All
it? Is it that
And-
LaVey fella?
Yeah, LaVey. Yeah, I'm doing an early life check, and someone's
more like
definitely got.
amazingly enough.
It's more like an Oivey in it.
Yeah, every.
It's surprising, isn't it? Just when you think, yeah, but okay. But yeah,
makes you think about
amazed.
all those. It makes you think all about those programs, doesn't it? Anyway, yeah. So what's been amazing is you've seen like the response from your libertarians, American constitutionalists, all those half-wits, and the argument is this is a religion, freedom of religion, this guy's literally worse than ISIS, and this. I think this sort of just shows. I mean, the fact that the judge who said is a Satanist is effectively, this isn't a religion. This was set up by a vengeful small hat cabal who hates Christianity, who have a massive in-group, who created this in-group organization with the weak foundations of the American Constitution on the concept of church and state of religion. They took the literal personification of evil in the Christian doctrine and made a church out of that.
Yeah, and then stuck a statue of it in a state capital in middle America as well.
Yeah.
Not in Los Angeles or New York where you would expect that, or San Francisco.
You know what? I'm not going to call
middle America, Iowa. For
yes.
God's sake.
Yeah. I tell you what. I'm going to start a trend on Twitter. I'm going to say we're not going to call it Satanism. We're going to call it Sephardic Satanism.
Well, we be very, very careful there, because of my YouTube channel, where there is, YouTube is not a free speech supporter. So,
well, I understand that.
I think you've made your point clearly enough.
But literally every single one of these fuckers, come on, I'm looking through the membership.
I would not say every single one.
Well,
yeah, quite a high proportion. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. You get the meaning.
I do, mate. I absolutely do.
You get my meaning. But what they've done is they've taken. I mean, the number one that's what's been allowed is they've taken just the personification of evil from the Christian perspective, Satan, and allowed it to be classed as a religion, and then sort of rub it in the faces of the majority. And you have you use your liberal take of, this is the founding fathers, this is what the American Revolution was fought for, and it wasn't. I mean, George Washington punished blasphemy in his army.
Yeah,
America was like 98% Protestant.
Originally.
And
maybe it was certainly a Christian country for most of its existence.
I might have overstated. It may not be. I'm excluding. It maybe 90% Protestant. I mean, there was a sizable Catholic population in Maryland and Rhode Island at the time. But that being said, it was an overwhelmingly English Protestant nation of colonies,
and it was certainly almost totally European Christian nation for sure.
Yeah. And what they have and what this is basically, you've got Hanania and other people with sus early life check names, along with libertarians and usual shit and usual also. And this is what's funny. It's not like leftists like Young Turks or the people that you might expect. It's actually like centre right dipshits, to be honest. Who have come.
I'd say centre left, but yeah, all right.
Well, people who claim
to me they're centre left, but yeah.
People who claim to be that they still believe in neutral institutions,
Which there are none anymore. They're all basically anti-white, they just are.
And you got James Lindsay who sort of aligned himself with
clueless dude.
This centre right, who basically said that this is literally the people who said this is literally the road to fascism, that we need this might be Weimar America, but we mustn't give in to the fascism and everything, and they're saying that what this guy did was terrible. It's un-American. And
destroying a statue of Satan is un-American. I'm sorry. I reckon if you'd have gone to most of America's World War II soldiers, they would have got quite angry if you'd have told them that. But there we go.
But the thing is, I do have to ask, and this is why I've sort of become quite, and I know there are millions of Americans who are against this, but is this like the end? Is this like the end stage, the end prospects of the American project?
Someone is suggesting in the chat, AI, that Hania is actually a Palestinian. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what is being suggested.
Oh, is he a Palestinian? Oh,
I don't know, mate. I've got no idea, but it certainly could be true as far as I'm concerned. Because those guys don't like Christianity either. I mean, when you look at the conflict in Israel and Gaza, my honest opinion is I'm not in favor of either side because neither of them are our friends. It's as simple as that.
I don't know about. I mean, I'm pretty sure I don't know about Hezbollah, but I know Hamas. They do try to do the PR of, oh well, we respect all religions because of course there are quite a few Palestinian Christians.
Yep. Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like Nazareth or Bethlehem or somewhere like that, where there are a bunch of Palestinian Christians. They got screwed over by the Israelis, and some Palestinian group tried to get some good PR with them or whatever. I can't remember.
Okay, well, fair enough. But like I said, I've no idea who Hania actually is. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend I know if I don't know. But I do look. I'm neutral on that war because I don't care who wins. Neither of them are my friends. They're not. They're really not.
I mean, the main thing that irritates me about particular wars, everyone pretends that they all understand what caused the war or why it's being fought. And meanwhile, I'm just like, okay, I can understand why the Russo-Ukrainian war is being fought. I can understand, let's say, why Argentines still seethe about the Falklands. I will never in a million years understand the war between Israel and Palestinians because I don't really give a
the only thing I have noticed, Mitch, about this is that apparently the updated figure is that about 1,200 Israelis were killed, and so far something like 17,000 Palestinians have been killed, which seems a bit one-sided to me. But that's all I will say about it.
Well, Arabs are really crap at fighting a war in the modern era, so I won't be surprised.
But yeah, it's kind of like 16-1 casualties in favor of the Israelis. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's like the thing is, I mean, when you look at Arabs in the modern era, how they fight wars, they just fight it really poorly. Like you take Libya under Gaddafi. I mean, sure, Gaddafi. I mean, with him being gone, the world's made a worse place. That's because Gaddafi kept the migrants in check.
Yes,
however, he did run down his own armed forces, knowing full well the dangers that posed because he always feared a coup from his own army.
Well, and if you're an Arab, you can kind of understand that, or any African leader, which Gaddafi also was. So even though he was not a sub-Saharan African, any African leader can see that because how often does it happen? When they're independent, of course, after all those horrible colonial Europeans had left the place.
Well, it's like in the case of Libya, I mean, we had the Italians who, to be fair, the Italians weren't exactly the nicest people to the Libyans, but because there was a guerrilla war. But they did build motorways in the area, so the Italians weren't bastards at all in comparison to what people think.
No,
so it's like. Well, I mean, I don't know about the southern Libya because no one really lives there, but northern Libya, like Tobruk, Bardia, there is a motorway there called the Via Balba, I think it's called.
Yeah, there were good roads, there were railways, and they were and quite good buildings, which were all built by the Italians, pretty much. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how long we administered at Libya for, but I think the Libyans have been
a bit after World War II, basically.
Yeah, so to my knowledge, I don't think the Libyans have it against us, except for Lockerbie, which I don't really know much of, but I've heard Libyans were involved in that. But
they were. Apparently, they were.
Yeah, but
again, like we're wandering a long way from our core subjects here. To me, like the main story this year for the Brits, for example, has been the total unraveling of the China virus narrative. That's almost totally been unraveled now, as far as I'm concerned.
Don't be a bad Duke.
I
I
think-
don't know. I don't
I
know
think
anyone in my real life who actually gives a care about the unraveling China virus narrative. Like, no one talks about it anymore. So even if it
Yeah, but
was
I mean,
being unraveled,
what I mean to say is, Mitch, no one. I don't think anyone really believes in it anymore.
I
Um,
probably do believe it. It's just no one talks about it. Oh, sorry,
I think the problem is it's so many news cycles ago. It's such a past event now.
mhm.
People have like literally. I remember you had well, I was going up to Bristol for work purposes, and you had like NHS, like Heart NHS, Love Heart NHS, all those stickers and like flags and posters and everything. And then literally the following week, Russia, you had the invasion of Ukraine.
News cycle moved on.
News cycle changed, and I went up to Bristol again, and all those places had like Ukrainian flags. And people and the thing there is people just straight up moved on, and COVID was like it might as well have been 100 years ago.
And yet there are still more people dying than should be dying, and then nearly all people who've been vaccinated. But whatever.
I would say though that there are core things about COVID which I think are I mean, you can question the science of
I think it was a bad flu, mate. I really do. I think it was a bad flu and should have been treated as such. I think it was a bad flu, and it should have been treated as a bad flu, and that's all we really should have said about it.
Yeah, I think from what I can see that you haven't got you're not having the you can talk about the validity of lockdown procedures like masks and everything now that even appears more than
that's been proven to be masked, totally useless.
You can talk about that.
Lockdowns nearly useless.
The one thing that you still cannot talk about is the the COVID jab though. That's one thing still one bridge too far. They will not accept any, even when I know there was on TV News the other day.
Even though there are extreme excess deaths completely correlated with how many people got jabs all over the Western world.
Yeah, that is one thing, because I mean, if you think about it, I mean, how you'd have to admit that they deliberately poison people. Fundamentally.
Well, they did, because they didn't do tests. They didn't test it properly, and Pfizer and everyone has admitted that now. They never
they've admitted it properly. But even today, like if you're still called a denier. And of course, the connotations of being called like a vaccine denier or COVID denier is, of course, the term a denier is heavily linked to the Holocaust.
Yeah.
So
and let's wait and see if we get a YouTube context notice, which is basically YouTube propaganda trying to tell people how to think because we've dared to speak about this subject.
Oh yeah, I had one of those context ones on my stream.
Yeah, I've had two
Connor.
now, mate. I've had two.
It was really bizarre because we talked. I think it was when we were talking about Ireland and the Irish Brotherhood and nationalism.
I got one of those as well, because we talked about the same bloke you're talking about.
Yeah, Michael.
We got one. Yeah, let's not do it because I don't want to get another. But yeah, the bloke you're talking about who has been dead for over 100 years, but apparently
Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson. Yeah, it was Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson we're talking about.
The death of Liam Neeson. Yeah, but I just think it's crazy. The other big subject, of course, this year has been the people coming over on small boats to the UK. which I think the whole thing is a red herring, because the real problem in UK, yes, those people should not be allowed to come to UK and stay there. You know, the illegal dudes coming over in small boats in thousands every month. Of course, that should be stopped. But the whole thing is a red herring, because the real problem in Britain is the 650,000 legal immigrants you're laying in every year. That's the real problem.
Yeah, so 10, 20 years ago, this was like a problem for the inner cities, like certain parts of not even like suburbia. This was something in certain cities, like mainly just London. Let's be honest here. It was London, maybe Manchester, Birmingham, Bradford. That was it. It was isolated. Today, there's no part of the English countryside which isn't affected by this. Even in the most rural part of England, you have. As I said on the stream before, we were driving through a very rural part of England. Like literally, the nearest city is about 50 miles away.
And today, even Wales and Scotland and even bits of Northern Ireland are getting affected by it now. You know,
Yeah,
not even just England. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and we're seeing more and more of it, and they are occupying our local town centre. That you see them more in my local village. They just come from. They just I don't even know where they've come from or what they're doing here, what their purpose is here. I don't even know if they're working or who are they? They appear to. I mean, they're African. That's one thing I do know. They're African. And this what you have now is every provincial town is now getting the London experience. It's become a mini London.
100%.
I think Carl Benjamin's talked about it with Swindon. It's happened all over towns across the UK. And you're seeing the breakdown in law and order among all groups now.
Well, I mean,
including
the British police these days basically hardly even investigate things like robberies and burglaries and car stealing and all. They hardly even bother with that now. Most of their time is spent on hunting down people who dare say anything about any immigrant group on Facebook, or who are talking about maybe we shouldn't allow loads of Middle Eastern yobs to run all over our war memorials and stuff like this. That's what the British police do these days, and arresting people carrying Union Jacks, because nothing is more insulting in Britain than carrying the British flag. That's what our police spend their time doing these days, and lesbian cops going and arresting little 16-year-old girls who dared to say, "You are my yet lesbian nanny or aunt," or whatever it was. That's what the British police do these days. There's no free speech in Britain at all these days.
No, and it's
just getting worse.
A pensioner somewhere in North England was pushed down. A pensioner went and spoke to a couple of them who were being rowdy in a shopping centre and said, to calm it down. He was being quite polite, and they pushed him down the stairs, and then he died.
I saw that.
And what's been inflicted upon the British public is genocide. It's fundamentally genocide.
Well, it's the destruction of the.
Let's not sugarcoat it. This is genocide. This is organised, targeted destruction of the British people.
It's certainly a great replacement. I'll agree with that, and it is the utter destruction of the traditional Anglo-Celtic British people. That's what it is. It's the utter destruction of the real British people who are Anglo-Celts. And if you dare say anything about it, you can even be sent to prison in the UK. That's the sort of state we are under, with Rishi Sunak, who is an Indian banker, who has no sympathy whatsoever for any real Anglo-Celtic British person. He just doesn't. I'm sorry. He's much happier every time he's in India. You can see in any video where you watch it.
And also, this year when I've been down to been to various hospitals, the waiting rooms or appointment zones, waiting zones in hospitals are filled. I remember I went into one and it was literally filled with Bangladeshi women.
Yeah. And then they wonder why the NHS just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and the waiting lists get longer and longer and longer, and the expense gets worse and worse and worse. It's the worst health system in the whole world, pretty much these days, the NHS. Britain can't build enough houses for all these immigrants they're bringing in. We have no jobs to give them because Britain doesn't make anything anymore, hardly at all. It's almost totally a service economy these days. Why do we need all these immigrants when we don't make anything? I just don't understand it, to be honest with you. Why is a falling population so terrible? I don't understand that either. Given we don't make anything. We don't make fucking anything hardly in Britain anymore. There's almost no industry left in the country now.
Well, you have Japan, where their population's gone down by 800,000, I believe, last year. So, to be fair, the thing is, people say, "Oh, well, the Japanese elites aren't doing anything," and I go, "Well, they perhaps should," because a falling population akin to what Japan's going through, there is a reason why people worry about it, because if the population falls so much, where the elderly far outnumber guys my age, it burdens my generation too much financially, and so
of course it does.
There's even less.
You're paying tax to pay healthcare and to pay pensions and all the rest of it. 100%, mate. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but then again, Japan. The thing about I don't know about what the Japanese diet's like or whatever, but their IQs have largely stayed the same, whereas ours have been dropping because of diet, societal decline in this country,
and mass forward immigration.
Sure, but I think even without, it's like, for example, apparently the average heights of British people have been falling the past 10 years, apparently.
Again, I think that's... But the trouble with all of that data, Mitch, is that it all includes mass immigration and doesn't usually break it down.
France and Germany, their heights have stayed roughly similar to what they were 10 years ago, so it's not because of mass immigration. But the Germans have got as much of a problem with mass immigration as we do, and yet their average haven't gone down.
But also British education is really terrible now. Let's be honest. Scotland used to have a outstandingly good state education system, which the SNP, the Scottish National Party, in inverted commas, run by Humza Yousaf, very traditional Scottish name. They've just totally destroyed it.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? To be fair, as I was saying, I don't think there's anything been happening in the past week in Britain that we can really talk about. I suppose you can talk about British history.
My only point here, Mitch and AI, was to bring up the overwhelming story of the year, which is ever increasing mass third world immigration into Britain, which is you're allowed to talk about the little boats, but that's not the really big problem. If there was no legal mass third world immigration, little boats would be a much less serious thing on their own.
Okay, sure.
Even though they're bad in and of themselves.
Sure, but I think to be fair, I can get blackpilled when I talk about it because let's face it. At the end of the day, most British people don't support mass immigration, yeah, but don't do anything about it. That's the main
Yeah.
problem we've got. Is most people won't even go to a voting booth to vote for someone like Steve Laws coming next election.
All I'm gonna say is what I say every time we talk about this subject, and I've been doing it now 4 years. If anyone thinks that Labour is going to be any better than the so-called Conservatives, they are deluding themselves totally.
Duke, I think everyone listening to you knows this, so
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Well,
I don't want
I
to come across
still
as
see
rude.
it, but I see it on Twitter all the time. Still, Mitch, I do. I see people saying, "Oh, Labour won't be any." Like even good people who I like Morgoth, will sometimes say, "Oh, Labour can't possibly be worse than the Conservatives." I'm sorry, yes, they can.
I'm very wrong though, because I mean, let's face it. I mean, Tories. I mean, okay, Labour gets in. What more can be done to us other than what's happening right now? Where the Tories,
look,
I would argue,
160 from 460,000 a year, you could go up to 500,000 a year under Labour. My point is
that's not really a massive change, though, is it?
Yeah, but
So it's like-
Mitch, my point is not this. My point is that basically the so-called Conservatives and the so-called Labour Party are a uni party. They are the same party. There is basically no real difference between them, except for some minor shit around tax. And you can add the Lib Dems and the Watermelon Greens are exactly the same as well. Right, all of those four parties, if you vote for any of those, all you're voting for is just carry on the same way as we've been going for the last 25 years. You have to vote for any of the smaller, right of centre, so-called populist parties. And frankly, at this stage, I don't even care which one you vote for. Vote for any of them, so long as it's not the so-called Conservatives, the so-called Labour Party, the Lib Dems or the Greens. Don't vote for any of them. Vote for almost anyone else. Actually, I'd even probably support voting for the communists instead of them.
All right, at the risk of sounding like really rude and whatnot, like you're just preaching to the choir, because no one who listens to you will ever vote Lib Lab, Con or Green or any of them.
I hope not, mate. I hope not. But I don't understand why good blokes. I don't understand basically good blokes like Morgoth are still pushing this idea somehow that Labour would be better than the Conservatives. I don't understand it.
Is Morgoth telling people to vote for the Labour Party?
No, but he's just saying that the Labour wouldn't be worse than the Conservatives.
Well, I think what Morgoth's point is, and this is what I was trying to get across with the thing was what the Satanic Church in Iowa is. Action is taken by a Christian who viewed it as, because it's not a real religion. It was created by militant atheists to basically mock and promote degeneracy and pedophilia in society. Right? That's fundamentally the Satanic Church, and the people who came out to defend it are people like who are the sensible, the voices of the centre right. These are people like James Lindsay and others libertarian people who self-describe libertarians, and they're the people who are in the wider culture seen as the voices I
even saw Sargon, Carl Benjamin, the other day on a stream saying that he no longer considers himself a liberal, even Sargon.
But that's my point, is that those people are exactly like the same as the Tories. What they do is, in the reason why they're worse is that they are, while you're having the mass demographic change in this country, they're holding the masses in this delusion that everything is okay, that they're the right wing, everything is fine, and that's what makes them worse, because they're the ones who are the containment. They are the ones who are pushing absolute abject evil on this country. That's what makes them really wicked, because for effectively for any right-wing victory, like genuine traditionalist right-wing victory, people like James Lindsay, people like that libertarian, the centre right, they have to be defeated because they are a bigger enemy threat than any Labour or Democrat politician or Democrat. Because no matter what they are, they're always going to do what the left is always going to do what they do.
Yep.
But you can't have it where I was looking at a stat of Newcastle, right? Population of Newcastle. So when I was born, it was like, it was like over 90, what was it, 95%, over 95% white British. Today, it's I think it was like nearly just below 80, and you have like high populations of Bolivians.
Yep.
I mean, what the fuck? That's so random of a nationality to be there.
Yep.
And as Mitch says, no, this has been happening. You had the BNP back in the day who warned everybody about it. You had people then warning everybody. And what happened? UKIP was then, the BNP were crushed. UKIP was thrusted in as a spotlight, and instead it was EU, and it was more like legalistic arguments of leaving the EU, and all of this was able to ferment in the background.
I'm confused, AI, about this a little bit. Like, Patriotic Archive has just asked us a question, which I'll get you guys to give your views on in a sec, which I'll put up on the screen. But I am a bit confused about this because I think that, I know that most of the people who voted for Brexit, the overwhelming thing that really made Brexit win was like mass immigration needed to stop. But our conservative rulers who never fought for a minute, and I say conservative in air quotes, obviously, because they're not really conservatives at all, but they never thought that this would really happen. And they and their Labour allies in Parliament spent 3 years at least under Theresa May, useless person that she was, etc., making sure that this never really happened. And so Brexit's been totally betrayed.
The people
they've just used it as an excuse to bring in even more third world migrants.
So
much? What? Just a minute, mate. I'll give you a chance in a sec. But how much Farage was involved in that? I don't know, mate. I don't.
Very little. I mean, yes, he had his own organization during the campaign. The main campaign was Leave.eu which was like Cummings and Boris, and other Tory politicians. Now, the problem is the entire premise was, as we know, we know immigration was in the background, but if you actually look at the writing and the campaigning, it was all about global Britain. That was.
I don't know. I definitely remember the UKIP posters with the millions of immigrants in like great long trains.
Farage, UKIP and Farage weren't part of the Leave organisation. They weren't part of the Leave group.
But that was a UKIP poster. That was a UKIP poster, mate. I remember.
Yeah, it was a UKIP one, but UKIP wasn't part of the Leave thing. And this is the thing: is what happened was the Tories took that energy, took that mandate, contained it, and basically said, no, the reason why people wanted Brexit, and you hear like Rees-Mogg and other shit libs that say this today, is they wanted a global Britain of international trade, international movement of this.
I've got nothing against international trade, but the international movement of people that's a total lie. It's
that's what comes with international movements of goods, capital, and people, and that sort of that's what
And in the meantime, the really harmful EU organisations like the International Court of Human Rights, etc., that Britain is part of, we haven't left any of those. None of them.
No.
Yeah, the European military cooperation agreement and all this shit, Britain hasn't left any of that crap. Not one of them.
No,
So
and
it's been totally subverted, basically. Brexit, which was one of the happiest days of my life, by the way, when it won, has been totally subverted, totally subverted.
I mean, there's a part of me that thinks it was like subverted from the beginning, but yeah, I mean, we all know we deep down, we know that the people on the ground voted because they were voting effectively, subconsciously, even if they couldn't articulate it,
to stop
they were
mass verbal immigration.
They were voting to stop mass wealth and also demographic replacement.
Yes.
Fundamentally, that's what they were voting for in their minds.
Yes, 100%. And I mean, you know, Farage, what I've got to say about Farage is he left immediately afterwards. He suggested that that twat take over, who was an idiot, and he was Farage's recommendation. And
Henry
there
Bolton.
was, Henry Bolton, completely useless person. And there was a lot of shenanigans went around the UKIP leadership elections at that time. And like I say, Farage walked away from it at that point. So I don't know, how much can you trust Farage? I don't think you can trust him very far, to be honest, at the moment.
No.
So Patriotic Archive has asked us, gents, what are our thoughts on a Boris and Nigel team up? I wouldn't trust Boris as far as I could throw him with the little finger in my left hand. Farage, not a hell of a lot more. But I don't know, guys. What do you think?
Well, my question was
untrustworthy.
No, my question is, we know at the moment that any attempt, but we know from like Liz Truss, right, that short period of Liz Truss after the Queen's death, where she tried to implement something that wasn't establishment aligned.
The Bank of England didn't like it, and they replaced it within days.
Yeah, the Treasury, the Bank of England, and the Globalists basically teamed up with Tory grandees, who then told the party MPs to basically get rid of her, and they did. Yep. They were booted. Now, if they don't want something done, they'll just say no, and we've seen that's happened at the Home Office over immigration before in the past. If let's just say Boris and Farage team up, or Farage he wins an election, 400 odd seats, he has a epic majority. What is he going to do? Like, how is he going to be able to get bureaucrats who worked against?
I think he'd be as ineffective as Trump was when he was president.
He's not going to, because effectively it has to go back to that old Bowden thing. You have to clear them all out.
Yeah, they've all got to go. All those senior civil servants need to be sacked. The deep state people. 100%.
They've all got to go. I'm going to have to go, Andrew. I'm really sorry, mate. I've actually got a bit of a cold. I'm losing my voice at the moment.
That's all right, mate. Thank you very much for joining us, AI. AI, would you like to give a shield for your channel while you're here, please?
Yeah. So I hope next week we're going to be covering me and Connor part 2 of our to continue our review of the Richard Hilton obituary of the strange death of the British Empire.
Very good series. I will recommend it to people. It's most interesting.
It is, and Richard Hilton has some very interesting takes on the early colonies. It's actually quite illuminating. There's stuff in there that I hadn't really thought of.
And your YouTube channel, AI, is called
AI Shire Tory.
There you go.
If you type it in there, you'll probably find a video which has like a Skyrim title. It's my popular one. It's like 2,000 odd views. It's on there. In the new year, I've also got I'm going to be. I don't know if I'm going to. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to announce it. So but I'm going to be invited onto another channel.
Mm-hmm.
When it's all public, I will I'll promote it. But uh, in the new year, I'll be on the on this
Cool.
channel, and we'll be talking about the and Mitch might be interested in this, the Christianity in Roman Britain, but also Anglo-Saxon Britain as well, sort of early Anglo-Saxon periods, and that should be quite good. I've been reading Bede's Ecclesiastical History of the English-speaking people, so
Mm-hmm.
sort of catching up with that.
Can I just say to at Lattle in the chat, has anyone got a link to AI's channel? I will put a link to AI's channel in the description of the video after the video. And if you look at any stream that AI's been on recently, if you look in the description, there's a link to his channel.
Yeah, baby, if you type in the AI Shaitori,
Yeah, AI Shaitori for sure. But but I will put a link to your channel in the description after the stream. So yeah, but yeah,
so,
good that you've got new projects underway. That's cool.
yeah, so looking forward to the new year, and hope I want to do a bit more streaming, get my channel back up to scratch again. Maybe do like reviews of. I'm really enjoying the book series. Might do some like other books as well. But I mean, everyone have a Merry Christmas to everyone in chat, to you, Iron Duke, and Mitch. I hope we're in for a better new year. I don't think we will. I don't think we are. I think it's all hopeless. But
I hope it's not hopeless. You know, the Brits have been in some dire positions at different times in their history, and we managed to pull through. I still hope we can pull through this time, but I agree it's looking dark at the moment. It really is.
It's dark. But the thing is, our fortunes could change very quickly. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. I'm Merry Christmas to you, AI, and a Happy New Year, obviously, to you and yours, all your loved ones. But yeah, we can just hope at the moment, I guess. We can just hope.
And I've been looking forward to getting sort of continue with on this channel in 2024.
You are always most welcome, my friend. Always.
Yeah. So good night and Merry Christmas, everyone.
Absolutely. Mitch, final thoughts?
I mean, as I said, there's not really been much happening in Britain as the past week, for instance.
The same shit that's been going on all year, like enormous amounts of legal mass third world migration. In my view, red herring of the little boats, which is also bad, but it's a red herring compared to the hundreds of thousands who are arriving legally. And ever decreasing amounts of free speech in Britain. This is what 2023 should be known for. You know, the increasing destruction of the real Anglo-Celtic British people and everything they've ever stood for, and the destruction of their history, insofar as the left can do it and the globalists can do it. I think that's mainly what we can look at from 2023. And of course, the other thing is the net zero green bullshit, which is basically a wealth redistribution scheme that is going to make everyone in Britain far poorer, have worse diets, and is, you know, when Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum talked about you'll own nothing and you'll be happy and you'll live in the pod and eat the bugs, they really meant what they were saying. They won't. They'll be jaying around the world on their private jets. But
I can't be arsed with the WEF stuff. like everyone keeps saying this. So effectively, some German who looks like a Bond villain is the cause of all our woes.
Not for a minute. Not for a minute, Mitch. No, I don't think that for a minute. What I think he does, and the World Economic Forum does, is they perhaps foolishly, in some respects, from our elites in inverted commas, they actually say the truth of what these people want. The ultra rich. Your people like the dude who runs Amazon and Bill Gates and Bezos, Bill Gates, all these enormously wealthy people who are absolutely even beyond rich. They have more money than many third world countries do. I think sometimes what the World Economic Forum does is they're too honest and tell the truth about some of this stuff.
Okay, before all the COVID stuff began, no one had ever heard of the WEF. I only knew it existed because
I knew of them before that.
So,
I knew of them before COVID.
And then all of a sudden they're meant to be like these ultra evil villains plotting to subjugate us all and force us to eat bugs.
I don't know if it's that, mate. What I think is that there is this ultra elite in the West that really does want to make us all into 21st century peasants again, basically. Where you might be allowed one flight, or like a return flight a year, maybe, where there will be blackouts because there isn't going to be enough electricity. Where beef will be like you'll pay probably 60 quid for an average steak. That's what I think they are trying to lead us towards. I really do.
So on one hand, you have my generation who can't handle any sort of hardship whatsoever. They're complaining like little women.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Do you really think that my generation will stick up for just like going through all these deprivations without screaming at the government 24/7?
I don't. But they don't seem to have that big a problem with not being able to buy a house.
Yeah, because that's the millennials were the first ones to encounter the problem, and they thought they could solve it with all that, that Occupy Wall Street sort of stuff. Yep. They did that, and it got nowhere. So we're all just despaired. Like we've just decided, it's all.
I think Patriotic Archive has got it right. Is that what's happening? Is this stuff is being gradually and not so gradually actually normalized. Like the evidence for man-made global warming is not great. It really ain't. And even the guy in Dhofar or wherever it was in the Middle East where they had that conference recently that all the people like King Charles flew to in their private jets. Even he said that, like, you know what, this is basically crap. But he obviously he's the leader of an oil state, so he has a reason to say that. But I mean, basically, the evidence for it is really poor. But most people don't realize it because the mainstream media and so-called journalists these days are not journalists. All they are is propagandists for the people who run us. That's all they are. And I mean, you and I know this, and probably most of our people watching this know this, but the vast majority of people don't. They just don't. And the fact that their education is so poor, makes them even less likely to work out what's really going on.
Well, the problem with climate change stuff is the science, like whether you're trying to prove it or disprove it, the science is just completely boring. Like no one wants to listen to someone lecture for an hour on YouTube streams about how we're all going to boil to death, or we're all actually not going to boil to death. All you have to do is emotional appeal.
It's all just weather anyway, which we've always had.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, there's only one. Like, the main reason why the enemy win on this topic is because they get like little idiots like Greta Thunberg saying we're all going to boil to death unless we do this, that, and the other. So they just use children to make emotional appeals. You can't win this argument by just going, "Oh, the science doesn't back it. The science doesn't back it." No, you just have to say, "Yeah, we're not eating the bugs. blah blah blah. You have to
Yep,
say stuff like
yep.
that. You can't win this debate just by going to, oh well, science doesn't support it, because no one gives a flying
No,
F
there's
about it.
look, one of the things that Sargon, Carl Benjamin, is only very slowly coming to realize, although I think he increasingly is that this idea that there's some intellectual debate going on is just a lie. There isn't an intellectual debate going on, because like all of the power of propaganda and brainwashing is all entirely in our enemy's hands. All of it.
I mean, I'd say this for Sargon, like he really is just very slow at grasping stuff like this. So
I think
just
he's coming to it now, Mitch. I do. I think, like as I say, he did a video
Yeah, but
last
it
week.
takes-
I think.
I mean,
saying
it's like what? How
finally
many
he
debates?
says he's not a liberal.
Okay, it's like how many years of debates with the likes of Millennial Walls, or Ron McIntyre, all the rest
Yep.
of those guys did it have to take for him to finally come to realization? Okay, we're not going to win this through debates. We're going to have to
Yep.
win it through.
Yep.
Really
I just point out to Patriotic Archive, who says just show them a video of a polar bear and a melting iceberg, which is what they do. But if you then turn around and say to people, actually, there's more polar bears today than there were 15 years ago, which there are, that's the truth of it.
Well, that's the problem, Mark. Like, you're just quoting a statistic, and people don't give a care. Well, they just care about emotional videos they see on YouTube or TikTok.
But
That's the main problem.
But they say things like, polar bear on a melting iceberg, but actually there's more polar bears now than there were 15 years ago.
Yeah, but no one cares, though, Duke. Like, no one cares, though, Duke, because you're just saying a statistic. You're not pointing out a video next to it, are you? Like, that's a problem. Like, the right just thinks if people will look at this with facts and logic. No, they won't. Most people people act in a very feminine way about this. They act like women in that you have to convince them through making emotional appeals to their souls and whatnot. That's the problem. That's why the right will never win.
Aubrey is pointing out in the chat that you don't want to listen to Al Gore discuss global warming for hours on end. And of course, almost all of Al Gore's original points in that infamous documentary, none of them have been proven true since he said them. In fact, they've nearly all been proven not true.
I've only listened to Al Gore talk for 5 minutes. I just thought he was one of the most boring guys I've ever listened to.
He made a very famous documentary years ago, Mitch, called An Inconvenient Truth, I think, or something like that, which is like an hour and 20-minute documentary. And nearly everything he said in that documentary, and of course he was parroting other people because he's a politician, not a scientist. Nearly every single thing he said in that documentary has been proven not to be true.
Yeah, that's funny, isn't it? So that's the thing about you keep saying arguments like that, but no one will listen to them except guys your age, because most people my age, because we're all young, we don't listen to facts and logic to form arguments. It's actually just emotional appeals. You can. So you take, for example, Edward Bernays, right? I mean, he's got a book about where he'll just say, look, crowd psychology is this. You don't win arguments by citing facts and logic. You do so by making it very emotional, because let's face it, crowds of people that act in a very feminine way. You have to persuade emotional appeals.
I mean, Bernays is the original guy who did like ad campaigns and stuff, and he was the guy who got women to smoke, because he made out to women that smoking was somehow feminist and freeing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Plus also, you can do an early life check on Bernays if you want to, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I had to study him in psychology, and his face told me everything, so I don't have to bother looking for Wikipedia. So. But to be fair, I mean, that's
I
one
don't know,
thing.
guys. Listen, I am somebody who never wants to give up and never wants to surrender, because I used to be a British soldier, and British soldiers are not supposed to do that stuff. But I got to tell you, guys, we are in very dark times. And when I say we, I don't just mean the Brits. I mean the Australians, the Canadians, the New Zealanders, the Americans, the white South Africans, and all of Western Europe. We are in very dark times.
That's the thing, isn't it? I mean, it's like I'd say one. I mean, I don't know. I've been thinking the last few days about how one problem with writers got is so many people are just really moderate. Like they just really don't fully grasp the situation at times. I mean, AI invokes James Lindsay. I only heard of this James Lindsay, by the way, because AI was.
Yep.
I mean, all I know is I've got his complete pipsqueak of a man. Like he will just play in a very dishonest way.
Well, he was a big time gay rights campaigner for a long time before he suddenly decided, he wanted to go, but he wants to go back to the 90s. And the trouble was, we were too far gone in the 90s. I mean, in fact, we were probably too far gone in the 70s, to be honest. But
well, it's like you say you're an 1890s man. I'm a 590s man about this sort of stuff. So
yeah. I'll give you that, Mitch. You are, because you're into the Anglo-Saxon history and Alfred the Great and all this kind of stuff.
It's like I know you have. I know, but I do feel like there's quite a few people on the right who are just like really team moderate. Like I saw one guy on Twitter who I can't remember who it was, who's saying we need to stop talking about grooming gangs because it's just too unpleasant to talk about it. And I'm thinking, I really can't be honest with people who think like this, who just have to think we can't appear too unpleasant, or we have to watch what we say around.
I don't know what's more unpleasant, like groups of mostly Pakistani immigrants to UK torturing, raping, and humiliating little English white schoolgirls as young as 11, or talking about grooming gangs. I mean, I'd sooner talk about grooming gangs. But, on the other hand, if there was justice in the world and English people weren't disarmed, nasty things might happen to those grooming gang people. But, in Minecraft, YouTube, in Minecraft.
Well, that's a problem, though, isn't it? I mean, that's a problem. It's not just us, though. Like, the Japanese are also like this, where they just don't like doing anything because they don't want to appear uncivilized. They don't want to come across as brutish and unsophisticated with what they do, so they just let foreigners just ruin their society.
But on the other hand, they have nowhere near the mass immigration that we have, mate.
Have you seen the Kurdish?
Yeah, no, I saw that on Twitter. Yeah, mate, I saw it. I followed your link on Twitter.
It was Craig. It was Craig who posted, I believe. What
was it? 8,000 Kurds? I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, what the hell are Kurdish people even doing in Japan anyway? Because
absolutely, totally agree. But on the other hand, if we only had 8,000 immigrants, I wouldn't worry.
Well, it's like I don't know. I mean, I don't know where I'm going with this, but all I've been doing this week is just like, look. I mean, I put up that link in the Discord about Japanese history documentaries, or I don't know.
Yep, saw that.
Yeah, and it's like I don't know. Like I do look at things, Robert, and I just think, and it's all like the same with Russia, where they've also got a much healthier society than us. And I just think
the trouble is, what tends to happen on the right is that people will look at somewhere like Japan or Russia, and they'll say, "Oh, there's this problem and this problem and this problem." But all of those problems are less than ours in the Western world. All of them.
Well, it's like I put up that picture where it said, "Oh, the Muslim birth rates in Russia are really just inconsequential." Like, for example, the only group with a high birth rate in Russia are the Chechens, and they're just about like 1 million or 2 million at the very most.
Mm-hmm.
They are not going to outbreed the Russians, who will make up like well over 100 million. Anytime soon.
Absolutely right.
So then you get the Japanese, who they've got their own issues with their falling population. However, the thing about Japan is they haven't got dropping IQ, so they're able to invent like AI or robots or whatever to make up for their falling population.
Yep. Which I've always thought will be the savior of us if we can do it, but who knows?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I can't remember what the precise quote or something, but like if I say like the British economy is a complete clusterfuck onto itself.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
There's just no sense.
We don't make anything.
What's wrong with that? I mean, even the stuff we do create, it's like we don't innovate anymore. Like we don't have that drive like we did in the Victorian era. to
And there's
excel.
and British investment in research and development is some of the lowest in the world. Like it's way lower even than Germany and France. Never known like China, Japan, and America. Way lower. So how are you going to innovate when you don't put money into R&D? So
Yeah, that's the main problem at hand. Like even like, I mean, it's like Bowden once said, "We were defeated people without actually having been defeated." Like we just like I know I go walking over my town and it's just like it looks like a Soviet village, as in like a post-Soviet village, which has just lost all will to live.
I know what you're saying, mate. I do.
And then you get, I don't know, but then again, like I don't know, all you need is a good leader. Like let's say Steve Laws and his new party. I wonder how much good that would do. Because that's the only party I'm really going to invest with.
Yeah.
And then again, I was floating the idea a few months ago of joining the SDP. For argument's sake, I don't know. Even though I got my issues with SDP and how moderate they are compared to myself. But
my own view, Mitch, as I've said many times, is like any of the smaller right-wing parties are worth investing in, compared with the so-called conservative, so-called Labour uni party and their SDP and Green hangers-on. Any of them are worth investing in. Because you know what? It can't do any harm. Put it that way. It just can't.
If Bryn Adam was still here, I think he'd argue that there's no point with voting because let's face it, there's so many dissident parties that the vote is just split anyway. Neither of them will actually get in.
And all of them need to get a brain in their head and like make some sort of an alliance, which I think is extremely unlikely, but it's what they absolutely need to do. But,
well, you say, for example, Reform, who are basically just Thatcherites. What common ground have they got with the SDP other than opposing mass immigration? Which
that should be enough. Look, my view is that that's the number one issue, because if you don't solve that, all the rest of it, whether it be LGBTQ or the green agenda and all the rest of it, if you don't stop mass fur-board immigration, the rest of it is secondary, to be honest, as far as I'm concerned. So that should be enough. That one issue should be enough for all those parties to unite and say, okay, we won't run against each other. That's all they need to do.
I don't really believe in big tent groups, though. If I'm going to be honest, I just think they're doomed anyway. Because
if their only issue was we want to stop mass fur-board immigration, I think that could work. It might break down later on, but if they just manage to stop that, it would give Britain a fighting chance, which we don't have unless you stop it.
Okay, I'd say this way. Within the electoral alliance, let's say the SDP, Reform, Reclaim, Steve Laws' party, and all the nationalist parties banded together. What can we really agree on other than opposing mass immigration? We don't agree.
But they don't need to agree on anything else, mate. Just that would be enough.
Duke, come on. You have to have more than just opposing mass immigration because people won't vote.
I think if they manage to get enough MPs into Parliament, right, and they're not going to win the election, all right? They're not. Doesn't matter how they do it. But if they got, let's say, I don't know, 30 to 50 MPs in Parliament as a group, if their most important issue and the one they hammered home all the time is ending mass fur-board immigration, they would get more and more. They'd get more and more votes at each by-election and next general election. They would.
Okay, Duke, like that's just not going to fly though, because the problem is people will just demand you answer more about other policies other than just talking about mass immigration.
No, I don't agree with that. I think if you were the spokesman for one of for a group of parties like that, you could go on any like biased brainwashing corporation news program or whatever and say, yeah, we do have our differences about other things, but our major policy is we must stop mass fur-board immigration and the replacement of the real indigenous British Anglo-Celtic people. And that's all they need to say. And they would get more and more and more.
Yeah, this is you being naive, Duke. Like, most people
don't think so.
Okay, because most people don't do anything regarding opposing mass immigration. But say they oppose it, but they won't vote. They won't go even to a voting booth.
See, I think they
and
would,
express
mate.
their
I mean,
opposition.
look at Wilders in Holland. He just won.
Okay, I'm a Dutch and we're continental. Whereas here in Britain, I mean, the Anglosphere is a different beast altogether compared to the continent.
I
Like Americans are the
don't
same,
agree, mate.
Canadians are the same.
I think there are more based normies in Britain than there are in Holland. I really do.
I don't know. The fact that they are quote based, I'm dating the fact that they're actually going to do anything other than just sit at home and complain about it all day long.
I think if we could get something going a bit like the Brexit story, but was about ending mass third-world immigration, I think that could have equal success, because I still think that was the main reason why Brexit won, really.
Sure, but it also had all the facets to it. Like, I mean, you did have some people, like, let's say the couple of wet Tory types, you know, the kind who talk all about economy or, I don't know, innovation and all that. Like, I think, like, you can't talk, I mean, I feel like with a topic like mass immigration, you're going to have to talk about issues that are affected by it. You're talking about it by proxy. Like, you're talking about, we must solve a housing crisis by doing this, that, and the other. We must solve the NHS
Biggest way of solving the housing crisis is stop mass third-world immigration. Biggest way to reduce rents and reduce mortgages, stop mass third-world immigration. Biggest way to make the job market better, reduce or stop mass third-world immigration. All of those things come back to the same subject.
Yeah, that's how way you'd have to phrase it for people.
You want to stop grooming gangs? Mass third-world immigration. Get rid of it.
Yeah, that's how you're going to have to phrase
all
it.
Of these subjects are related, which is what I'm trying to say. And sensible, really, like, reasonably clever political people could put that together. And it's not even complicated. And it's just true, you know. Mass third-world immigration at one and the same time inevitably pushes up housing costs, whether it be rent or mortgages, while at the same time pushing down wages, especially for the less skilled. This is not rocket science.
Yeah, this is where it gets me right. So I'm not doing this as a bit of a gotcha moment, or like I'm just playing devil's advocate with this. So they say, like, on one end, all of these Bangladeshis, Indians, Pakistanis, and whatnot, they all just stay at home and don't bother working. So how the hell do they repress wages like the Eastern Europeans used to do? Because I mean, the Eastern Europeans
for one thing, right? They're putting more and more pressure on the NHS and all of the British welfare services, all of which are paid for by those British people who do work. There's almost nothing, Mitch, that you can't bring back. Like, if the bad things happening in Britain at the moment, whether it be the repression of free speech and what have you, there's the explosion in crime. There's almost nothing that you cannot bring back to mass third-world immigration in Britain of the real big problems in the country.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. I mean,
and that's my humble opinion. It really is. I think a good political person, and certainly someone like Farage, if he wanted to do it, and I'm not saying he does, but if he did, is easily clever enough to work this out. You know, there's almost no real big fundamental problem in the UK today that you could not bring back to mass third-world immigration. Almost none. I mean, there are a few, but they're peripheral, and they would all get better without mass third-world immigration.
What peripheral issues you're thinking of? Because I can't think of many.
Oh, look, the education system and stuff like that. But even the education system, you can turn around and say, well, look, when you look at London schools where there's only like 3 white kids in a class, you can kind of understand why they're not doing very well, can't you? You know?
Well, I was thinking more. Okay, you have like Farage, for example. I mean, apparently there were children down south. I don't know where Farage was. Farage didn't say specifically, but apparently Farage, I think it was Maven Politic or someone like that, who they were saying about their friends down south who they can't get any school places for their children because it's just the population has just expanded so much,
Yep.
while the schools haven't been built enough. Well, schools haven't been built enough. I mean, it doesn't matter how many schools you built. You just can't. I mean,
You can't
given
keep
the
up with
birth
it.
rate-
Yeah. It doesn't matter how many crappy little tiny townhouses you build, you can't keep up with it. It doesn't matter how much money you throw at the National Health Service, you can't keep up with it because the Britain is just expanding at a ridiculous rate with people who really hate everything Britain stands for the most part. I mean, Gerald to Rivia here in the chat says racist employment laws. Yeah, and those racist employment laws almost all racist against Anglo-Celtic white people. This is just a fact. I think you can take nearly all of Britain's really systemic problems, nearly all of them, you can take back to mass worldwide immigration.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, I suppose you can say global warming comes from the elites, but what sense does it make? So you take India, for example. I'm pretty sure over top 10 most polluted rivers in the world.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure 3 of them are in India.
Yep. China and India are the 2 biggest polluters in the world, and I think the 3rd one now is Indonesia. So yeah.
I mean, I think like Africa also. I mean, not just like not a specific African country, but like Africa as a continent, like they
yeah, but they're so. But the sub-Saharan Africans are so inept at doing anything that they don't compare to Asian places. So the number 1 polluter in the world is definitely China. Number 2 is India, and I think number 3 now is Indonesia. And you know, again, the green net zero stuff is really, it's a scheme to try and transfer wealth from Western nations like Britain and Australia and America to third world nations like China and India and Indonesia. That's all it really is. It's nothing else. And yet they're the very nations that are doing most of the pollution.
Yeah, I don't see how. I mean, in the case of, I remember one time in geography when we had to learn about all the world pollution, blah blah blah. Like the geography teacher tried to argue along the lines of, we have to do it because we were already industrialized. We can't tell China to stop polluting because, well, they're going for their own industrial revolution, and
but we're deindustrialized though, Mitch. In Britain,
she says
to a lesser degree, Australia and America are also deindustrialized.
Yeah, so it's not even that. I mean, I know it's like you take China with industrialization, okay, but I mean, you look at how the Chinese treat animals. Do we really trust people like that with industrial progress?
Well, I mean, look, the animals that are getting rare in the world, like elephants and rhino and tigers. And sharks and all sorts of other animals. Why? Because the Chinese eat them or think that they've got some magical properties in their crappy traditional medicine stories. You know, the Chinese think that if you eat tiger penis, it will somehow give you an erection. If you eat rhino horn, which is the same stuff as your fingernail, they think that that's going to give you an erection. They want ivory from elephants because they want to make crap basically from it, and you know, all of that stuff, you know. But then, you know, they eat dogs, they eat bats, they eat just about anything that moves or crawls. But you know, is that racist? No, it's not. It's just the truth. But you know, whatever.
Yeah, we're not cultural relativists around here, are we?
No. Not absolutely, no. I mean, you know, as far as I'm concerned, if you eat dogs, you're a barbarian, and the Chinese eat dogs, so there you go.
Well, I mean, Indians call us barbarians for eating cows, so some of it can be quote unquote relative. But I mean,
yeah, but you know what? A cow is a domestic animal, whereas a dog is man's best friend. Is not quite the same, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, there we go. Anyway, I don't know. We're not going to solve the world's ills on this stream this evening. I mean, at some stage in the new year, we really need to like put together a special stream, which is going to be like, what's the real problem? And I think like mass third-world immigration is the real problem. I mean, the LGBTQ nonsense, you know, where people literally cannot say what a woman is. That's part of it, of course it is. And the green net zero wealth transfer agenda, that's part of it as well. But they're all related. They're all related. And the mass third-world immigration stuff, of course, the more mass third-world immigration you get, the easier it is to bring in most of that other stuff. And you know, you'll get people saying, oh, no, we could make alliances with the Muslims against LGBTQ. No, we can't. No, we can't. Because their self-identification and going along with their own group is far more powerful than them allying with us to stop little kids getting LGBTQ stuff, particularly when it's only really Western little kids that are taken in by that. You know, you don't see all that many Muslim kids taken in by that at all, do you?
Well, it's not just that. I mean, allying with like Islamists, quote unquote. Well, but I mean, you need only look at Iran to look at how good that gets you. Because I mean, the secular Democrats and socialist types of Iran did that, allied with Islamic elements, and they get outmaneuvered because the Islamic types very, very fervent in their belief. Like once, I mean, let's say you chucked out all the LGBT crap. Okay, that alliance is dead, and you now have to chuck out the Muslims. But in the process, you've entrenched them by working with them.
100%, mate. Yeah, 100%.
So,
this is why I've never supported this white Sharia crap. Never have. Yeah, I think you make a very good point there, Mitch, to be honest. Mitch, did you want to shill this old English stream for late next week again before we close?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in terms of screen share because it didn't work.
No,
I don't know what's going to happen.
Mitch, we'll do a stream in private before we do it, so we make sure we can do it. It might be you just need another permission or something. I don't know, but we'll do a private stream to check it. It'll be working by the time we do that.
Yeah, because I've got like a folder of like 15 pictures.
Yeah, not an issue, mate. We'll find a way for that to work.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think Patriotic Archive makes a point that I think the loss of some sort of Christian religion in Britain has been a very bad point in Britain. But on the other hand, you look at America, which is more Christian in many places, doesn't seem to have done them much good either. So, you know.
I mean, the main cities where all the power is, they're completely atheist to high hell.
Yeah,
so
it's
the same way as us.
Yeah, it's little places in the middle America, which is still quite religious. I think you're right about that. Yeah, I mean, I've been around 3 local churches in my area, and I've never seen, apart from when they were doing something like line dancing or whatever it was, I've never seen more than about less than a dozen people in there, and the youngest woman was probably 65. You know, so whatever.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. I mean, on one hand, you do get the internet, like because I mean, you get plenty of guys on Twitter who are like my age, and they're saying they got into religion because the internet, like, there's a lot of religious stuff in the internet, and I'd say just like the lack of spirituality. Or at least authentic spirituality is what drives men to get into Christianity. I don't know where I am with this stuff because on one hand, I can like paganism. However, paganism will never be mainstreamed in the same way that Christianity is.
No, the only thing I would say is like I like really Christian DR people like Dave the Distributist and Apostolic Majesty. But I also like really pagan guys like Survive the Jive, you know? And I think those guys can definitely cooperate without a problem. I don't think there's an issue with that.
Well, it's like you got the Varangian Guard. And originally they were pagan, but they were working for the Christian Greeks. Now, nothing stopped them from working together because they all... I mean, sure, yeah, the Varangians originally, the Norse ones, they had a different grasp of civilization.
Yeah.
However, over time, there's still the Norse and the Greeks were still fundamentally European. Like, there's no way a Norseman would think of a Muslim from the Arabian Peninsula in the same way he looks at a Greek.
No,
So
absolutely right. And of course, the Varangian Guard eventually, after 1066, became increasingly Anglo-Saxon English.
sure, but those Anglo-Saxons were Catholics. So I mean, even
Yeah,
then,
they
I
would
don't
have
know
been.
how big.
Yeah, absolutely, they would have been Catholics. But of course, you know, the Byzantine Empire itself, the Eastern Roman Empire, was Orthodox, basically.
Yeah, wasn't what? When was a schism? I think it was like it was before the Norman conquest. So you can imagine,
Yeah.
you know, the Eastern Romans, they were still suspicious of Catholics, but the religious divide didn't stop them from being allied with the Anglo-Saxons
Absolutely
who
not.
worked with them. So it's not like, I don't know. It's like even like religious divides like that, like Catholic versus Orthodox, at a time when the schism just happened, it didn't stop with Anglo-Saxons and Greeks getting along. So
No,
nothing
and
should
like
stop.
Saxons also went to the Crimea and settled there at that time as well, like in the 1100s, you know. So
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's like, for example, for my part, I mean, it's like if I ever were to get religious, it'd either be either paganism or, let's say, Eastern Orthodox. I can't really see. I mean, I don't know. Like the Catholic Church, for example, there's just so many guys on Twitter who just like, you get the trad calf from Mexico, like Catholic Orca or whatever. Well, those types who are just posting. Like, they'll post stuff about how white women are all terrible. I mean, we all must have babies with Hispanics and Asians rather than. It's
yeah,
just
no,
like, yeah,
look, I don't think that's the solution at all. Look, every group in the world, every racial group in the world has an in-group preference, and the only one that's not allowed to have an in-group preference is basically white people. Everyone else has and is allowed one, but we're not uniquely.
and it's like you have I don't know. I mean, on one hand, it's like I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah, the thing is, like, I think like we have to go back to Christianity. Even like I think even pagans have to realize that, because at the end of the day, we were Christian for the past like 1500 odd years. You can't turn your back on that heritage as much as like the lots of Varg try to argue so.
You're going to end up being a cultural Christian no matter what if you're a traditional Western man. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I bet you, like the average follower of Varg, they don't believe in sacrificing humans to Walden.
No, of course not. No, of course not.
Because at the end of the day, we've been Christian for 1500 years. The morality will rub off on you, despite you calling yourself a pagan. So, in a way, Christianity is a lot more natural to us at this point. It's like the Russians, for example.
I don't disagree with you, mate. I don't.
Yeah.
Look, we've been going nearly 2 hours and 40 minutes. I don't know that we're going to get much further with this discussion at the moment, except that we are facing a very bleak future unless things change. And, you know, I think we've said, as we do very often on this channel, some of the most basic reasons for this, not by any means, well, the major one of which is mass third-world immigration. I'm sorry. It's the overwhelming issue for all Western civilization today. And I don't care if you're British, Australian, American, or whatever. It's the overwhelming issue for all Western European and Western nations, all Anglosphere nations, no exceptions.
Well,
so, yeah.
I'd say like the best thing that can be done is just, I don't know. I mean, I'm saying stuff I ought to do myself is like, I don't know, let's say, for example, start getting into religion, start building your life up. Nothing's going to change politically anytime soon. So, best thing that can be done is just build up your own social capital in life.
Yeah, I think like everyone's been saying this, and it's true. You've got to make networks of friends. You've got to make networks of friends in real life as well. And so as times get harder, and they're going to, you have people who can help you out. That's definitely true. Yeah, 100%. At this stage, I would just like to wish you, Mitch, and all of the people watching this a very Merry Christmas and hopefully a Happy New Year. And on that note, I think I'm going to play us out of a tune. Hopefully, if it plays. All right. And that, of course, was a tune from the excellent channel Patriotic Archive. Please go and check out his channel. He's a friend of this channel. And I agree with Patriotic Archive in the chat. I do like a bit of brass bands at Christmas. Always puts me in mind of when I was a small child in the late 60s and the early 1970s in London. And often at Christmas time, you would have a Salvation Army band or something playing somewhere whilst collecting money for the poor and so on. So, yeah, I do like a bit of brass bands at Christmas. Thank you very much to my guests, AI and Mitch. Once again, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to my guests and also everyone watching this. And hopefully things will get better next year, although I am not holding my breath, I have to say. I'm hoping I'll be back with Mitch towards the end of next week to do that stream about Old English. And you never know, I might sneak in a special stream on Christmas Eve if I feel like it, but we'll see. Anyway, go well, folks. And by the way, I did check Entropy and we don't have any super chats, so there you go.